Bianca had always been ridiculed and stared at because of her face. The only person who did not seem to care was her husband Lance, who had always been able to look past it. But on the day of their wedding, Lance was in for a rude awakening as Bianca suddenly started taking her face off at the altar. She had been wearing a mask this entire time, and nobody could believe what was behind it. Lance took a step back in shock and horror while all the people present at the wedding took a collective gasp. Everybody was stunned by what Bianca was doing, and at first, nobody could make sense of it. That is, until she started taking giant chunks out of her face. It was like a layer came of it. She was finally ripping off the mask that she had worn for so many years. The disguise that nobody knew her without. She had waited until their wedding day to show her true self to her husband-to-be, Lance. Tears started to well up in his eyes, as he realized the truth, and as he was holding Bianca, all he could do was ask why she had hidden this from him. But what was behind the mask of Bianca, and why did she feel the need to hide her true face from the world? Until now. At the wedding, Bianca finally took her mask off, and she was beautiful. Lance knew she wore a mask, but had not known how she looked under it, and Beyoncé had done this to find true love, which she did. A photo of her real face was also posted online, and the big reveal got millions of views. Bianca was a mysterious woman. For most people who knew her, that's the best definition one can give. Even if they talked to her every week or every day, it always felt like there was something hidden under her words. It seemed like her past was completely unknown. It was almost as if she were hiding something on purpose. She moved into town roughly 5 years ago, when she was 23 years old. And, while people barely know anything about her present, they know literally nothing about her past. It might be obvious that the best solution should be asking her, but that simply didn't work. Bianca avoids every question about her past. However, she had a reason to be so mysterious. As much as many things about Bianca were unclear, there was one matter that sparked everyone's curiosity to the extreme. People were afraid to ask many things, but this particular topic was different. People never talked about it with her. It was something that required a lot of explanation. That topic was Bianca's face. Sure, people were scared of what Bianca might think. However, something else made people even more afraid of asking about her face. Lance. Lance had been Bianca's fiancé for a long time, and a very protective partner. Those who regularly saw the couple could see Lance's behavior. If someone talked about Bianca's face, it wouldn't end well. Whenever Bianca and Lance were in a pub, walking down the street, or just chilling at the park, Lance would sometimes look over his shoulder, alarmed. If he caught someone talking, or even thinking, about Bianca's face, his face would go red, and his neck veins looked as if they were about to pop. Most times, he would argue. Other times, though, he would take some extreme measures. There were times when Lance became so furious that he got into fights. He almost physically wounded a man once. Those cases, of course, happened with people who didn't know boundaries. Still, this kind of behavior made people scared of asking anything. It left Lance's and Bianca's friends with a lot of unanswered questions. As time went on, people observed Bianca's face more and more in silence. Her facial aspects looked uncanny, almost deceiving. It looked a lot like it was a normal face, but not completely. Then, discreetly, something started to cross her friends' minds as they spent time with her strange face up close. They realized it looked like she was wearing a mask. But, people would say, if she really wears a mask, then why would Lance act like this? It made sense. Since they're in a relationship, Lance would realize if Bianca really had a mask. And if he did realize it, then he wouldn't be so mad at people talking about her face. Still, some friends were certain she had a mask on. How, then, could Lance not see it? With all the rumors and gossip about the woman's face, Lance and Bianca started to become distant. At first, they stopped showing up at pubs and public events. After a while, their visits to friends and family were less. In time, they simply didn't appear in public anymore. Lance and Bianca began to seclude themselves. The couple's intentions with this seclusion were a secret, too. But if they wanted to stop the gossip about Bianca's face, they failed. Their retirement from social life actually made people even more curious. Not only that, but something else happened. Something that would make the couple regret their decision to seclude themselves. Obviously, when Lance and Bianca got isolated from the world, their friends were worried. However, the couple also decided they would travel by themselves for a whole week. And during that period, they also shut off every connection with the outside world. Social media, phone calls, messages, everything. That started a problem that turned out to be a huge snowball. Missing. Lance and Bianca, last seen a week ago, said a post on the internet with a picture of the two. The couple's friends and family began posting around the internet saying the couple went missing. The post got shared rapidly, and a lot. People around the country and the world shared Lance's and Bianca's face. It wasn't, though, intending to actually find them. Bianca's strange face became known on the internet. People started to share her picture everywhere, only because they thought it was funny. LOL, this girl's face is horrible, one of the malicious posts said. Hope she goes missing forever. I don't want to ever see that face in person, another person typed. The amount of evil comments and shares was absurd. It was a nightmare. Meanwhile, Lance and Bianca were on a vacation. They were enjoying one of the best moments of their lives. It was a trip to a very beautiful place. They were walking by a picturesque landscape when Lance, with nervousness and shining eyes, kneeled. "Will you marry me?" he asked Bianca. Tearing up, she said yes, and they happily kissed. But none of them knew what was happening back home. After their vacation was over, Lance and Bianca went back home. They arrived in a very happy mood, however. It didn't take long for this happiness to fade. All it took, actually, was Bianca picking up her phone and checking her social media. First, she saw images of her being shared everywhere. That was odd, sure, but what really triggered her was what she saw next. Both Bianca and Lance had tons of notifications flooding their social networks. "Show us what's under the mask," a message said on Bianca's phone. "Do you wear a mask too?" someone asked Lance. Thousands of messages and comments about Bianca's face, not only in their phones but also in their heads now. Lance was red with anger. Bianca felt like she was going mad. However, it all started with good intentions. The whole ruckus began with Lance's and Bianca's worried friends. All they wanted was to know the couple's whereabouts. They never wanted this whole situation. And so, feeling guilty and regretting every single moment of it, they did their best to try to wipe the couple's image from the web. It was, though, hopeless. Bianca's face was everywhere. On the internet, it was clear what was everyone's desire. People were sure that the face they were seeing wasn't Bianca's real face. To them, it was a mask, and they wanted to see what was behind it. One of the most shared hashtags online was "Mask off Bianca." Bianca, however, wasn't planning on doing anything for the sake of the internet, even if that would make the whole thing die down. Surely, if he's in a relationship with her, then he knows about it, a comment online said. Most people were sure Lance knew about Bianca's face. This debate got even more heated as the couple announced their wedding. How could someone not realize their fiancé was wearing a mask? As much as that point made sense, it wasn't possible to confirm he knew, unless people acted boldly. Since they had to organize their wedding, Lance and Bianca regularly went out. With such a big hype about Bianca's face, people couldn't stop themselves from asking about it. Still, even if people were discreet and asked subtle questions, Lance would always ignore them and simply walk away, ending the conversation. As for the friends who originally posted the picture, Lance and Bianca stopped talking to them, but not forever. With the wedding almost at the couple's doorstep, it was time to send invitations. It came as a surprise when Lance and Bianca sent an invitation to the friends who posted the picture. The friends didn't know if it was some sort of trap or if it was just a way to reconcile. Either way, the friends were happy with the invitation. They scanned over the invitation. Although they were glad for it, they couldn't help but be fascinated by the entire event, as they were still very curious about their friend's mysterious fiancé. The wedding was going to be an autumn event that would take place in 2 months. But curiosity aside, they were glad for the opportunity to rekindle their friendship and reached out to Lance to hang out. To them, the invitation was a perfect opportunity to regrow their longtime friendship they had worried was doomed. Luckily, Lance accepted and the old friend group got together. But by the second hang, they realized very quickly that the old rules still applied. Bianca's face would not be a topic of discussion. However, the group of friends had known each other for many years, and despite their brief conflict, could tell when changes had taken place. And the biggest change was in Lance. Although he had made it clear that he had no interest in discussing Bianca's face, they couldn't help but notice he did not seem to enforce it as eagerly as before. In fact, they found that their friend was almost jumping at the opportunity to express his feelings on the matter. However, they had gone too far the last time they ventured down the topic. The friends all decided they would lightly prod but not push too far. It would be up to Lance to decide how much he wanted to share on the matter. And one night, it seemed, they succeeded. They had all been hanging out at one of their buddies' home. There was quite a lot of drinking as the week countdown to the wedding had started, and suddenly, Lance started to share. The friends were surprised to hear the tale from Lance's perspective. He admitted that up until the internet fiasco, he had been oblivious to the existence of the mask. He explained that right from the get-go, he had been drawn to Bianca's golden personality and had never fixated on her looks. But that became difficult when her face was plastered on every social media platform. The friends squirmed uncomfortably as the feeling of guilt resurfaced with that statement. But Lance continued, not noticing their discomfort. He explained that at first, he had tried to ignore the comments, but finally, he had given in and scrolled through them. Seeing how perfect strangers had analyzed Bianca's face made him uncomfortable, and suddenly his suspicions began to grow. Was his future wife, the woman he planned to spend the rest of his life with, all a lie? Did he truly not know what she looked like? From that moment, Lance realized that he would need to confront Bianca. The worries were eating away at him, and he found that it was causing a deep strain on their otherwise perfect relationship. One weekend, he broke down and demanded to know the truth. But before she could speak, the look in her eyes was a dead giveaway. Lance was stunned. There was no denying the guilt that filled Bianca's eyes. He could feel the tremors of rage building up inside of him. She really was wearing a mask. How could she? He immediately demanded that she reveal her true face to him. But her response shocked him. No! Lance took a few steps back in shock. He couldn't believe what he'd heard. But before he could speak, Bianca let out a sigh. She explained that she had made a personal vow to not take off the mask until she was married. And sadly, Lance's outrage would not change the outcome. If he loved her, then he would have to be willing to wait for her. Lance watched in stunned silence as Bianca left the room. Days later, he found that he was feeling deeply torn. Not only had Bianca been lying to him this entire time, but now he was left with a troubling choice. He knew he loved her completely, but was he truly ready to spend the rest of his life with someone when he didn't know what she truly looked like? Lance's friends watched him in silence. They weren't sure what to say. It was clear that he had chosen to respect Bianca's wishes as they were about to be married. But it was also obvious that all of this had been weighing heavy on his mind. They just couldn't understand how he was willing to go through with everything. No matter how they looked at it, the truth was plain to see. Bianca had lied to Lance the entire period of their relationship, and to top it all off, she would not even share the truth with him now. Instead, she was making him make a difficult decision. It was hard not to worry for Lance, but even with that, Lance was determined to marry Bianca. They did not understand his decision, but in a way, they had to respect it. It was clear that Lance had found a love he felt transcended physical appearance, and for that, they were happy for him. But in a week, the truth would be revealed. This thought was widely shared by everyone who received an invitation to the wedding. The week seemed to go by quickly, and yet alarmingly slow as they all speculated what Bianca looked like under the mask, and why she had gone through such a troubling effort to hide it. The most popular theory among people was that she had a birth skin condition. They knew it could not be hereditary, as Lance had met most of her family. They argued that perhaps it was a burn or scar from an accident, but even that didn't seem as likely after they debated it. Either way, their questions will be answered tomorrow. The wedding was set in the early weeks of September, and lucky for the couple, there was no rain in sight. The guests began to pile in an hour before the ceremony, everyone brimming with the same level of curiosity. Lance stood with a wide smile at the entrance of the chapel to welcome people. Bianca was noticeably absent. It was true that it wasn't uncommon for the bride and groom to not see each other before the ceremony, but did it matter when she would be wearing a mask? The truth was, everyone the groom was eager for the bride to make her appearance, and for the mystery to be uncovered. Finally, most of the guests were seated. The doors were closed to avoid interruptions, and Lance took his place at the altar. Like all grooms, Lance was nervous, sweat built across his forehead, and his feet tingled with alertness. But unlike most grooms, Lance had no idea what his bride truly looked like. Then the music started. Lance and Bianca had chosen the song because it was one Lance had always loved. But at that moment, as Bianca walked down the aisle, he could barely register the melody, much less the lyrics. Lance was overjoyed that he would be marrying Bianca. Finally, it was time for the vows. But as the pastor opened his mouth to speak, Bianca lifted a hand to stop him. The entire church was shocked. They all murmured amongst themselves. They wondered if they were about to witness a jilting. Instead, Bianca explained that she had given it a lot of thought and decided that Lance had a right to know who he was marrying before he made such an important commitment. Everyone's mouth fell open, and silence descended over the chapel hall as they watched in bizarre fascination as Bianca began to rip off chunks of her face right there in front of the hall. Bianca's true face was revealed. People had guessed, but it seemed no one had been right about Bianca's true identity. The revelation was so shocking no one was able to speak, their mouths falling open and slamming shut in shock. Bianca was a beauty. Not just your everyday beauty, but perhaps one of the most beautiful women any of the guests had ever seen before. Why had she been hiding her face? Bianca knew what everyone was thinking. It was the same question her family continued to ask her. She explained that all her life people had favored her because of her looks. And while it had been nice, she never truly knew if someone liked her. She had made a personal vow to only marry for love. And to do that, she would need to take drastic measures. Bianca smiled then. Lucky for her, she had found that person in Lance. With Lance, Bianca had found true love, and now she was able to know with certainty that he did not just want her for her looks. The couple exchanged their vows right after the revelation, and to this day they share a life and home together, still very much in love.